Hello folks, a Y Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful spring day. The sun is out and wowzers, okay? I love it. The name of this video is called The Y Guy Defines Real Affirmation. I looked up what affirmation meant, the definition of it, and it basically says emotional support or encouragement. Okay, let that sink in just for a moment. You know, it further on explains, gave a definition of the lack of one or both parents. Affirmation leaves some children emotionally crippled. You know what, folks? I believe that almost all people, to one degree or another, all people on this entire planet, regardless of when they were born, to some degree or another, are emotionally crippled. You know, why is it that we instinctively actively seek some form of affirmation from others? Why is that? That's because we're all emotionally crippled to some degree or another. You know, it's as if we're hardwired to need it. I believe we are. I believe we were created to need it. And sometimes people's behavior resembles even a drug addiction. Have you noticed that? It's like one can never get enough affirmation. We've all seen those folks that are extremely insecure, you know. Heart should go out to them. But anyway, I'm not ashamed to admit, me as the Y Guy, I'm not ashamed to admit that I, as well, I need and I want affirmation, just like all of you. Okay? But from whom is an important key to our psyche. Whom do we want that affirmation from? That is so important. You know, if someone were hooked on drugs or to become a member of a church, for at least a time, they would still be hooked on drugs while attempting to serve God. All right? Now, I want to talk about serving God for just a moment. You know, because on the surface, that sounds noble, doesn't it? And it sounds wholesome and wonderful to those wanting a relationship with their Creator. But here lies the enormous problem, folks, with that whole thing. Because of the want and need for affirmation, people have been deceived into believing by serving God, I have to do the serving God, they will receive affirmation from God. That's a deception, folks. It's a bald-faced lie. And ignorant men and women within leadership in Christendom, they capitalize on people's seemingly need for affirmation from God. You know, yes, some of those in leadership, they do so because they themselves are equally deceived and they need affirmation from God too, right? And they feel that by promoting your need for affirmation from God, they're fulfilling their need for affirmation from God, and then they want you to then spread the word that all those loved ones, they need an affirmation from God too. Can you see the vicious, deceitful circle here? And to make matters even worse, there are charlatans and con men and con women, if there's such a word, who know exactly what buttons. They know exactly what buttons to push in order to promote their agenda with the congregation or the masses. They know. They know. They're well trained with manipulation. You know, with the smallest amount, as a example of this, with the smallest amount of historical research, historical reading, one will discover how and why the ancient Latin Church printed the Latin Vulgate. They had an agenda. You know, placing themselves in the position to be dependent upon for, what? Affirmation from the masses. Then to further their wicked goals, they made it appear as if affirmation by God was a requirement to keep a person out of hell. That's why it was used so much. That's the reason they stuck hell in the Vulgate. You know, where it was never there before in any of the previous Greek and Hebrew, Aramaic manuscripts. It didn't exist before 440 AD. But sadly, this exact same technique not in the insertion, but the manipulation and pushing the right buttons and all that. The same technique is being used in Christian churches throughout the world today. You know, of course, ancient churches' goals would bear no fruit whatsoever of getting affirmation from people, you know, or them giving their affirmation to people, if they didn't promote the hell doctrine. They wouldn't get that. It was used as a tool, like I said, to manipulate people. You know, by substituting the words death and grave, and pit, and Gehenna, and unseen, a few of those words, then they changed them into a word representing a fiery underworld of no escape. And they put themselves in power pretty quick, didn't they? I challenge anyone to prove me wrong about this historic fact, okay, about their insidious agenda. And in closing of this video, folks, the good news, the real good news, when you are faithless, that word faithless, when you have absolutely no faith whatsoever in God, God is still faithful. That's the good news. Let that sink in deep inside of your being, okay? There's no need to seek affirmation from God, okay? You've always had it. Always. That's what love is all about. For God so loved the world. For God so affirmed the world. You could put in there, it's just a white guy insertion, okay? Paraphrase. So let God be found true. There's another verse, I think it's in 1 Peter. It says, and I'm going to paraphrase that too. Let God be found true. And that part is word for word, but here's my insertion. And the agenda and doctrines of men be exposed for the liars they are, by claiming you need affirmation from God. Okay? I wrote a book about these kind of things where I felt the need to defend God's love because God's love has been slandered so bad. I wrote a book called In Defense, I don't know if you can see that, In Defense of God's Love by the Wide Guy, yours truly. I'm going to leave a link to Amazon somewhere in this comment section of this YouTube channel. Consider subscribing to this channel. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down accordingly, however you feel. If you feel a need to disagree with me, which is fine, because it'll bring out conversation. I love disagreements, frankly, as long as they are polite. If you look at some of my videos and some of the dialogue I've had back and forth with folks who disagreed with me, you'll notice how we respect one another. And you'll also notice on some of the ones that I didn't delete, how disrespectful they were, and frankly, I returned the favor. You know? But I've decided, though, more recently, just to delete them and not even lower myself to their standards like I did previously. Well, anyway, look me up on Facebook under a group called The Why Guy Group. There are 3 questions that you must answer to join that group. Simple as that. It's a private group. And I also have an open public timeline under the avatar name of Jonathan Jones. If you want to become my friend on that, you don't have to be, because it's open public. Because I realize I post things that are controversial, and I don't want to give you any grief with your friends on your channel, okay, or your timeline. So you still might want to check out some of those things I say without everybody else knowing that you're checking out some of those things I say. And I don't blame you one little bit. I really don't, okay? But check it out. And if you do want to become my friend, give me kind of a heads up by saying maybe you saw this YouTube. You know, it would be kind of nice just to know. I do thank you for viewing, and I hope this video made sense.